Hello everyone, I'm Melanie with Painting Crafty, and we are going to be working on our last little farm set drawing in our series. For this month, we've been doing farm animals, farm scenes, and we've covered the gamut from being more of a folk art style to some antiquity, like whimsical style with some animals and clothes. And now we're going to do this really kind of a folk art style. Again, very whimsical. Perspective does not include anything. It doesn't have to matter if the sizes are right. It's about colors, shapes, and just the characters. So let's go ahead and start drawing this. Now, I do have a Ko-fi page for those of you who might like to have a little help drawing. This is where I have my subscription. It's very reasonably priced. If you go over there, you can get the tracers that I do for the drawings. I know not everybody likes to draw, but you like to paint and play. So pop on over there and see what I might have to offer. I'm going to start with the drawing part first, and then I'm going to be showing you a watercolor. I'm going to be using some mixed media today. I'm going to be using some colored pencils too. You might want to try some of those things too. So get your stuff out today and play. This drawing is all about playing, fun, kind of reaching in and touching your inner child, one might say. Let's go ahead. I'm going to make me small, and we're going to bring this up. So let's talk a little bit about the shapes, because that's where we just need to break them down. Now, this is type of like what would look if you got a tracer if you got a tracer, you could download this and have this to be able to draw. I highly recommend using a light box if you get a tracer. There is a video on my page and Watercolors tips and tricks about how to use a light box. Makes it so much easier to actually do the tracers of your watercolor onto your watercolor paper. Now let's take a look at our little guy here. I did divide this thirds. Now you could eyeball this. Like I said, this isn't a very serious picture. You want to choose a horizon line. I chose one up higher. I knew I wanted to have my barn in there. So take a look of how big of a piece of paper you have. Look at where your thirds might be. I chose the higher third because we use the rule of thirds of where our horizon line is going to be. It looks better not to have it exactly in the center of the line of your picture. So I chose the third, did a little bit of a hill, and built my components on there. Now the first area, after I got my hill in, that decided where the rest of my animals and my buildings are going to be. So I started with my horse. She's living right there in the middle, and as you can kind of see, I'll switch it to this one here. I'll show you this direction here. So if I divide my paper in the middle, my horse is going to be living pretty much smack dab in the middle. She's a focal point. She's what we're building all the rest of the animals on top of. So she is going to be here. She's a little bit below my center line. But the very first thing I want to do is I'm going to put a placeholder in for my dog. It doesn't going to look like a dog right away. I'm just going to put a little bit of a U shape here. This is going to give me an idea of where I'm going to be placing my dog, so then I know how long to make my horse's neck, because horses have fairly long necks, not long like giraffes, but they do have a little bit longer of a neck. So the first thing you want to do is, we know here is my dog. Now to do our neck, we're going to come up here. We're going to simply first start with a U shape like this that's coming back. So we're going to first start with a U shape that comes back. We're not even going to worry about the jawline or anything. We're just going to be creating a U, kind of like a long finger shape. Off of this is where we're going to build her back. So I'm going to come around and I'm going to give her a rounded rump here. This is just a rectangle shape. So I'm going to give that rounded rump here. And there goes my pencil breaking. You know I don't like these pencils. Those who watch on the regular know I don't like this new pencil I bought. So I'm going to make this a rounded rump, and then we're going to come down, and there it breaks again. Now we're going to make her belly. Now her belly is going to have just a little bit of a swoop, a nice gentle line here. This is going to give her that contour of that she's coming around. Now we have our long finger shape drawn for her head. We need to connect that. That's going to be her chest. So we're going to come up this line. We're going to swing it in just a little bit and then connect it. So your line is going to have a little bit of a line like that. All right, so now we need to finish up doing our horse. Now this doesn't have to look exactly like a horse. She is, once you get the mane in, the ponytail, the ears, the nose, it's going to look like a horse. But the one thing that it does need to have is this little bit of a jawline. That's going to help give her a little bit more of a horse feeling. So this was my finger shape that I drew here first. So I drew a finger shape, but now I have to come in and create this little bit of a line here for her jaw. And then this is going to be my horse nose. So we're going to continue that way. So that's what I did on this one. I had my finger shape drawn, and then I came down, I dropped down a little ways, and then I got to come back in to make my nose. So I dropped out just a little ways. So I came down, here's my finger shape. I dropped down to create my jaw, like that. And then I came up just a little ways to make her nose. There. Now we have the horse head done. Now she's going to look more like a horse once we get some more of those elements on there. So don't give up yet. I've not drawn very many horses, but I love this whimsical style. So I thought you might enjoy doing it too. Now horses do have a big nose hole. So we're going to be adding that bigger nose hole here. And then I just gave her a simple little smile. Just a simple little smile, a closed eye because she's nuzzling up to her little doggy friend. And I just popped some ears in here. There's not a lot of structure to those ears. They're just a little bit of an M shape that's on top of there. Now, when we go ahead to do our mane, when we put our mane in, and I'm not going to draw that in, I'm going to save that for my paintbrush, but you could go ahead and sketch that in lightly. I just did individual pieces because, again, it's a whimsical style. I just did individual pieces on there. Now let's go ahead and put that ponytail in. And I wanted to do like that, what we think of a little girl ponytail. So I wanted to come up with a curve and then come back in. So let's put that little ponytail in. We're going to come up, give it a curve, come back, leave some space here. So we don't want it to touch my horse here until I get all the way to the top. And there's her ponytail connected right in there. So now she's starting to look more like a horse, right? Now let's work on the legs. Now the legs are the same rule that when we do all of our other legs, when our legs are here, where these ones are the back ones, so the belly will go over the backs. So the belly goes over my back legs, and they're always open, the ones that are facing us. So let's pop some of those in. It always looks good to have a little motion, like one of the legs having a little bit forward or backward motion. I'm going to make this one have a forward motion. Now these aren't exact, they're just whimsical. So have fun with this. So she's going to have come down. Now you might want to take a look. Is your belly too long? Is she going to have too short of legs? If she's going to have too short of legs, raise your belly up. I might want to raise my belly up because this gal might have too short of legs once I get done drawing it. So if I raise her belly up just a little bit, then she's going to have maybe a better leg that's going to make her look more like a horse and not have too squatty of a leg. I'm going to come by the back here. Now you can decide too, is this when you're going to have a horizon line here? Like this is going to be my ground where she's going to be standing on. Keep that in mind too, because then that'll determine, are your feet going to be standing on the ground? Is there enough leg room to be able to put on there? So I'm going to come in, do my first leg here. Now this is the one that's in the front. So I want to make sure I erase that belly line because it's going to be connected. We won't see that. Now to do the back one, I'm going to come a little forward and I'm going to just kind of even it up here. And these don't even have to be exact because it's a folk art style. It's supposed to be whimsical and irregular. Now this front leg, I'm going to draw this front leg right away to give that kick on it. So I'm going to continue this line from her chest out. I give it a little bit more curve there. And then I'm coming back in to touch up. Now again, I would need to erase this line because that line is showing, or that's part where we're going to see part of her body. Now to do the back one, I'm going to start here. And I'm going to give it a kick where there's doing a V shape here. So I'm going to create that V that's between my legs. All right, now she has a little bit of emotion in her body. She's not just so static, but she's good. Now take a look at your little guy here. See if this makes sense. Maybe round it in a little bit. She doesn't have to be perfect. She's going to be really cute is when we're going to be adding all of her polka dots and her little extras on there. So we're going to be adding all those little extras. Let's jump up and make our kitty cat. Now, this kitty cat is not the right perspective. This kitty cat would normally be a lot smaller, but with the folk art style, you can mix it up and change it up. So I wanted my cat to be kind of big. So I'm going to put that on there. So she is actually, if I look here, she's up into my horizon line up high. And I call this the keyhole kitty cat because that's the shape she is. So I'm going to start here with my top, or let's start down here at the bottom and make that keyhole of the keyhole shape. So that's kind of more of that triangle shape is this part. And then I'm going to just pop her little round face right on the top. I like to do this little sketch motion with my hand Circles are hard to draw all at one time for me. This way, it just kind of gives me some time to allow where I want to put my shapes, and I can figure it out that way. Now, kitty cat ears, she's going to have just some off to the side, like so. I'm going to give her an upside down triangle nose. That always looks good on a kitty cat. I'm going to give her like a big old smile on there. You can decide what you want to do for eyes. They could be closed, they can be open. And I'm going to exaggerate these whiskers a little bit on here, just to even add a little bit more whimsicalness to my cat. I'm going to exaggerate them. Now, for all of these little animals, I only drew, for the small ones, I only pretty much gave them 2 legs is all I did to make it in simplified form there. So these are just going to come down. They just have a little bit of a toe line on them. Not a lot of extra on there because the feet or the legs are just a little extra. Okay, so that is, just make a little W shape on there and have it sitting on her back and she's good to go. Now she's got a little bird on her tail, so I wanted to make it a little bit bigger of a tail and create an S shape. I wanted it up a little bit higher and then coming around. Now my little bird shape is rather like a check mark. It's nothing too fancy. So if you start with a rounded check mark shape like that, then you can just go ahead, round off your head, bring it back. And then this is where you get to decide what kind of tail you want. If you want it to have a wide tail, if you want to have a skinny tail, it doesn't really matter. I think it looks great to have a little longer leg. Again, it's not the right perspective. That bird probably is not going to be that big, but that adds to the whimsical nature of the drawing. And I'm just going to put a little beak right here, a simple little eye. You can decide if you would like a wing on yours. I did not include a wing, but I did include some little feathers at the top. Those are all extra details you can add. Now let's jump over here and let's do a chicken. Now this is a little different chicken than what we did earlier. We did do a chicken in this series too, a big one, but this one's kind of a more of a whimsical style one. So I'm going to just start with her legs. I'm going to put her legs on here first. I'm going to give it a little area so I can kind of have an idea of how big I'm going to make my chicken. She's going to be kind of a U shape here, depending on how your lines go here. If you're more flat U, she's going to be spread out flatter. If she's a more upright U, she's going to set up more higher. So depending on how you draw this part, depends on how your chicken will look. I'm going to come over up to her tail. I'm going to come back. There's her back. Now when I get to her head, where her head and her neck would be, I'm just going to come up and loop it like that. And that's all I'm going to do for my chicken. Again, I'm going to give her a little bill here. She could have a comb. That will give an idea, make it feel more like a chicken. She could also have her waddle. I did not include that in mine, but that would be a great add-on. Add a little bit of a waddle. Her wing is kind of just a sideways. If you think of a heart with an extra bump, that's all it is. And then her tail feathers, I did give her a little tail feathers. Now you kind of might be noticing that these animals are bigger. Maybe the horse doesn't quite match the size, but that's okay. That's going to give its whimsical nature. All right, we have to add our dog in. And our dog is getting a little bit of a nuzzle from this horse. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I put a placeholder in for the body, so I know I need to kind of make my dog about that height, but I can change the body ever so slightly. I can start with his arch over here, bring it over. This would be my head or my neck of my dog. And then the back is going to arch slightly out, just a little bit. That'll give an idea of that my dog is sitting sideways. There's the arch. And then this part is just going to come more straight. So my dog is facing sideways. So I have them in there. Now to do the dog ears, I've just made them a little bigger. Something simple. You can make them as simple as it's a little U shape like that. This one I created more of a floppy ear, all kind of cute. But what added the extra cuteness, I thought, to make the animals look a little bit different is to change their noses. So this one is a round nose with a dog smile. This one I made the triangle. Whoops, let's get you a picture. This one I made the triangle. Of course, the pig has to have a round circle nose because that's what it's going to make it look like a pig. So you might want to think about changing up the noses. That'll just be a simple way to add some character. So this little guy just gets a round nose, some simple eyes like that. He's going to have a nice, oh, you know what I thought looked good? after I drew it the first time. The second time I thought might be a better option is because they're nuzzling, is to have a little bit of a closed eye on this dog too. So he's thinking, oh my, that feels so good. But you can change the way he looks is by the way his eyes and his facial expressions are. I'm just gonna pop some little puppy dog ears in here off to the side. I don't draw dogs very often either, so I thought I needed to include a dog. Now this is just a simple U shape for his feet. I didn't give him a back leg, but you could add a back leg on there if you wanted to. And I put his tail on, and of course they're going to be low because the dog's tail is down low. So you're going to add that on low. Up next was this cute little pig. Now we've done a pig drawing, a different style of pig drawing last week. You'll want to go back and take a look at that if you hadn't had a chance to draw it because they are super cute. But all of this is basically a circle and kind of a flattish circle, snowman-like body. So take a look at where you would want to have, how much room you might have to put it on there. So this is kind of like the snowman head, be right on there. And then I would pop it off to the side here to give it a little bit more of a body situation. We're going to come around. I did move it down just a tiny bit. Now, pigs do have big ears, so I did put a little bit bigger of a piggy ear on my little guy. And of course, he's got to have that round nose because that's going to give it that pig look. And he's got those little nose holes in the front, super cute. I gave him just little tiny eyes and just a little bit of a U-shaped smile. Nothing too elaborate. And then for his legs, these are a closed U. I made it like a closed U and gave it those little points on the end, like a little pig hoof. And that's all I did. Stuck a little piggy tail in there and you got a pig. All right, we have a few more elements to draw. We have a barn and a lollipop tree. Now, a lollipop tree or a balloon tree, whatever space you might have in there, you could fill it up. You could do multiple ones. Again, add the whimsical look. The barn is going to be where mine is on a hill. So it has a little bit of a hill thing. So I just started with my lines that came down and touched my hill. And then draw a line kind of in the middle of your barn. So that can line up your doors and where your rooftop is going to go to be. For some reason, this hip line right here on this barn is always a challenge for me to draw. But that's one way to help me figure it out is to draw this line down the middle. Then I can put my boxes on for my doors, make an X in there, make one across, do the same thing up here. Now, once I have my point of my barn, I can start with an angle. It's got this triangle feel here, but it's not too pitched. If you get too pitchy, then it's hard to get that next angle to come out. So, or at least it is for me. So I start with my T and then I come out with that hip roof that's coming off to the edge. Then just tuck your sides in there. And there's your barn. Now, all the extra pieces that are added onto here, the flowers, the little plants and things like that, those are going to be extra special things that you might add to your drawing, whatever might make sense. It's all about color and texture in this drawing. And like I said, I ended up adding a little bit more whimsicalness to it by adding that colored pencil in the background. And to my special friend Carrie, who's been drawing with me for about 4 years now. This purple horse is a thank you to her because she has been one of my longest time viewers and drawers. And I so appreciate Carrie coming on every week, sharing her work and encouraging all of us to try and giving others ideas. She's a great person. I just wanted to say a personal thank you to Carrie for following along all of these years with me. I so appreciate it, which is a good reminder that if you haven't subscribed to my channel and if you would like to, go ahead and do that. It's so appreciated. I always appreciate all my return viewers as well as my new people that are here. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. And a special thank you to those who have been so faithful and who followed along on this wonderful art journey. And again, for those who might want a little bit of help on drawing, you can always go to the Ko-fi page and find the tracers. Well, let's start with the watercolor look. Now, the watercolor is going to be a simple technique. I'll explain some of the little techniques that I do. In some areas, I will probably speed up because once I talk about it, then you'll get the idea and you can follow along. Often, many people will watch first and then do it second. So I'm going to start with my purple horse. And I'm going to be choosing a violet color. Now I'm using the paints that I have. Use what you have. This is the Rubin paint. It is a little bit better paint, but it doesn't really matter. I first started out doing watercolor with Crayola markers. If it's a Crayola marker that you have, you can use it. All you have to do is take a little bit of a hard piece of surface, rub your marker on there. Once the marker's on there, put some water on it and you have watercolor. So don't let it stop you if you don't have all of the right things, or you don't think you have all the right things. You most certainly can start doing watercolor. And you don't even need a watercolor brush either. Use what you have. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and wet my horse first. So I'm taking the plain water with watercolor. It's a great idea to have a clean bucket that has one side that's clean, and the other one is for like washing out your brushes. That way you have some clean water to be able to put on your items. So I'm going to keep it right where I want my paint to go. Watercolor always flows where your paper is wet. And I'm going to be making this a purple horse. So I'm going to put in my areas that are purple first. Now I'm looking for a glisten on my paper, not necessarily puddles. Okay, so I have a nice glisten, and maybe I can hold this up to show you. Now I'm not working on 100% cotton paper. I'm working on Canson watercolor paper, which is a 140-pound watercolor, which makes it a student grade. It's a mix of paper. It's not 100% cotton, but it's a perfect paper to start with watercolor. You're going to get a nice result, and it's easy to work with. Now I'm going to start with my violet first. Let's see where I got all my colors here. Got this little pan. I love this little pan, this little palette, because it's white underneath, so it allows me to see kind of the color that I got started. And then I'm just going to lay in some of this purple right on my wet spot, and I'm just going to push that paint right around, and it's going to stay wherever the paper is wet. Now when I get to my tail, I'm thinking I want some bright whites in there of even like the paper, so I'm going to leave that. With watercolor, you can't get those bright whites back in with paint, with watercolor paint anyway. You could always add them in with ink or gouache. You could add those areas in, but I'm going to leave some of the white of my paper on there just as a bright highlight on her tail. The rest of this I'm going to be painting in purple. Now, if this is dry enough, I might want to wait a little bit more for this to dry before I put my mane in. If I put my mane in too soon and my areas are all wet here, it's all just going to blend together and I'm not going to see a difference. So it's important to give it a chance to dry a little bit. All right, now what our next step is we want to choose an area where our purple horse isn't touching anything else. I'm going to start on this blue sky up here. I'm going to take some of my clean water, and I'm going to be going over my sky area. I'm okay with going over my tree. I'm going to be using kind of an aqua color here, so I'm not really going to want to put that behind my barn, but I'm going to want to be able to go around some of these items. So I'm going to go ahead and wet the area. I'm okay with going over my tree, but I'm not wanting a lot of that color inside of my cat. So I'll make sure I go around that. I'm going to go around my bird, so I don't have a lot of color in there either. And again, I'm just going for kind of a glistening look. Taking a little bit of toilet paper, going to make some clouds. We've used this technique in some of our other paintings for landscapes, so I'm just going to kind of lighten it, use it to lighten my clouds a little bit. If you get too much of a definition or a line, you can always come in with your like a damp brush and soften those cloud lines a little bit. I'm going to choose a bluish green, something that's a little bit cooler color for my little tree in my background. So I'm just going to choose kind of a bluish green because the colors in the back are going to be cooler greens, and then as we move forward, our greens are going to get warmer. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of a blue, cool green here. Give it a tap. And I can go right over this. I've had a little bit of time to let this dry. So I'm going to come right on the top of here and add my green. Color is still wet. If you decide you would like to lift a little color with watercolor, you can come in with just a clean, damp brush, and then you can pull your color and lift some of that up and create a highlight is how you would do that. I also wanted to point out with your circles on your horse, if you need them to be, if you want them to be more of a clear circle, not a blurry edge, you'll need for your horse to dry, and then you would put your circles on. But I was okay with it being this way. I'm going to pick up some more of that purple, and I'm going to finish a little bit more of my horse. So now since this is dry, I can come in and I can lay in her mane. I'm putting an orange kitty on, so I'm going to start with my brightest, lightest color. With watercolor, you always start your lightest, brightest colors first. I'm going to see if I can't leave her front legs white, but you start with your lightest, brightest, and then you work to your darkest. You're basically painting the shadows is what you're doing when you're using watercolor. Let's start building the red of my barn. Reds are, pretty transparent. I'm going to start with kind of a light, my lightest red, my brightest red, and I'm going to lay that over my barn. A little bit of some peach coral color in there just to warm her up just even a little bit more. Definitely want to make a difference on her nose, so change the color of her nose. Maybe add a little bit of color inside of her ears. Could add a little bit of cheek on there too. But just by adding just the tiny bit of detail and bringing that color a little bit next down to the next layer of darkness is going to really change your little animals. Let's work a little bit on this chicken. Last time I did her in red. I think this time I'm going to do her in kind of a gray color with maybe some little bit darker spots. Let's add another layer of red on my barn just to darken it up more. Now let's take this brighter red and let's mix a little bit of kind of a reddish brown in it. Let's dirty this red up, kind of tone it down so it's not so saturated. And I'm going to be adding that as another layer to my barn. Make sure you've got a good amount of time for your animals to dry. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint around some of these things. I'm going to be adding a little bit of water into some areas, but not oversaturating some of those areas, mostly in the big parts, because I want to have a little bit more control around my flowers in those areas, because those I'm going to be painting a golden color, and I really don't want a lot of green inside of there. So I'm just taking the tip of my brush, which is one reason why I really do like these little sharp point rounded brushes. This happens to be a Velvet Touch Princeton brush. They're reasonably priced. It is a watercolor brush, which means that the belly on your brush is going to hold a lot more water or paint, and when you're doing this, and that's what they're set up for. But they've got a great point on them. They're going to bounce right back into that nice pointed shape, and you really do want to have that really nice pointed shape. But you can use other brushes too. It doesn't have to be a watercolor brush. Now when I'm doing my background, again, I want to look at starting my cooler greens here and then move down to my warmer greens as I'm coming towards me. My brush back and forth and create a little bit of texture that way. So I'm not looking for a perfectly smooth area. I'm not rubbing too close to the areas that I'm already finished because I don't want to re-wet that color and reactivate it. So I'm just kind of skipping along real quick with the edge of my brush and then pushing and pulling the color throughout. Okay, it's looking pretty good. I'm really liking it. Now, since everything is still kind of wet from my background, I'm going to take my heat tool and I'm going to give my picture a dry, just to make sure my colors aren't going to all melt together before I start doing my flowers and my greenery for that color. Often when you're drying your watercolor paper, especially if we don't have it taped down, you're going to get buckling. It's going to curl on you. So you need to add the heat to the back of your paper as well, and that's going to help flatten it out. Now there's a little bit of texture on my horse that I created. You can do that at this stage when it's called glazing over. You could add the pattern with your brush, or if you want to add it with a colored pencil at the end, you can do that as well. I did add a little bit of extra texture the same way I did in my horse on my barn, on my tree. Now I'm not going to be doing a ton of outlining on my things. I'm going to be just adding the accents, and then I will be going in with my colored pencil to add even a little bit more texture. This one, I'm going to be adding a little bit of extra whimsy today. I'm going to be breaking out my colored pencils. I'm using the Prisma brand. Any kind will work. But I'm going to be taking a similar color to my background, to my sky, and I'm going to be creating some scribbly bits. I love to do scribbly bits. I'm just making some irregular lines back here and creating an extra pattern and adding to this whimsical nature of this drawing. I'm going to be taking a brighter yellow one, this particular one, and I'm going to be adding a little bit even bright highlights on here. That is what we're going to call done. How sweet of a picture is that? How fun. I'm hoping that you enjoyed it, that you were able to take your time, play with your materials, see what you can create. They're all going to be different. They never turn out the same twice. And just get your materials out, your art materials, and play with this one because it is so much fun. And again, for those who may not know, I do also have a Facebook page, and there will be a post of what this draw is. And I love to share other people's artwork. So if you do one and you wouldn't mind sharing, post it underneath there. I love sharing it with everyone who pops on because it doesn't have to look like mine to be good. We all have different ideas, and you encourage other people to try too. So thank you for coming along. Again, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd so appreciate it. And I appreciate all of those returning as well. Click that bell to get notifications of when I put up my next live. Have a great day, and thanks for drawing and painting with me today.